All right, numerical patterns. So these can be kind of tricky, and so we're going to go through a couple of the most common types of questions on numerical patterns. And so it'll typically be like they're going to give you a sequence of numbers, like these three right here, and they're going to say, what's the next number? Okay, so this one is squares. And so what that means is 9, 16, 25. What they want you to be able to see is that they're just going 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16, 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25, right? And so it's relating to all these numbers up here. And so what's the next one going to be? Right, we've gone 3, 4, 5. Next one's probably 6, right? 6 squared, 6 times 6, 36. That'll be the next number. Okay, and then so that's a very common one that you want to be familiar with. Numerical patterns. So we got 3 of these little examples where we have numbers in sequence like this. Okay, the next one, see if you can figure out what this would be. 2, 4, 6, 10, and 16. Okay, so you can see it's not the squared thing, right? And so we start thinking, okay, well, what else could it be? And so the next thing that you look for, so the first thing you look for is the squared, right? Is it that? Okay, so this is clearly not that. So the next one is real common, is that they add the 2 previous numbers together, right? So here, 2 plus 4 equals 6, right? 6 plus 4, this number, and this number. 6 plus 4 equals 10, okay? 6 plus 10, the middle number there is 6, and the 10 equals 16 right here. So they keep on just adding the 2 previous numbers together. So what's the next one going to be? The 2 previous numbers are the 16 right here and the 10 right there. 16 plus 10, 26. That would be the next number. So squares is the first thing we look at for. Adding the 2 previous numbers is the next. If you just know those 2, you're likely in good shape. Those are the 2 most common ones that show up. But you can get a trickier one. So we'll do this one. Let's see if you can recognize it. Let's see here. 5, -2, 8, 1, 11, 4. Okay, so you can be pretty sure once you do that negative that it's not a square, right? And they're not really adding the 2 previous numbers together. And so then after that, you're just sort of looking for like a general pattern, like some sort of alternating. Like I do one thing to one number and then another thing to another. So then I just start looking at them like, okay, difference between 5 and -2. Okay, that would be 7. Okay, so it looks like subtracted 7 from these 2. Okay, and then I look at these 2 numbers. -2 all the way to 8, that's a difference of 10. Okay, so I'd say there they added 10. Okay, then from 8 to 1 right here, difference between 8 and 1 is 7, so again they subtracted 7. Okay, so I'm like, maybe I see a pattern here. Okay, 1 to 11, add 10 again. Okay, and then from 11 to 4, again, 4 is 7 less than 11, so they subtracted 7. Okay, so I can now see the pattern right here, right? Subtract 7, add 10, subtract 7, add 10, subtract 7. What do you think the next number is going to be? Add 10, right? So I got a 4. If I add 10 to it, 14. Okay, so there's the pattern. So that's one where you're just before you get to being like, I have no clue what's in this thing, I'm just going to guess and move on, is go through what I just did right there, right? And see if there's like some sort of a pattern that wasn't necessarily all that obvious when you just looked at it at first. The first two are more likely to show up, but something like this can show up. And it's not necessarily going to be -7 plus 10, right? It's just going to be some pattern where they do one thing, then they do another thing, and then they go back to doing the first thing again. And if we see that a few times, then we can recognize that pattern. Okay. So also in this section, on this topic, we have consecutive integers. Okay, so that'll say something like 3 consecutive integers total 99. What are they? Okay, and so this one requires a formula. So the way we do that is we go x, that's going to be the first integer, plus x plus 1, that's the second integer, and make sure it's plus 1 and not any other number. And the third one is again x plus 2. So now that's going to be our 3 integers, equals the number that they asked for, which was 99, yeah? Okay, so if we add these up, I have 3x plus 3, that equals 99, okay? Subtract 3 from both sides, so I just get the x by itself. 99 minus 3 equals 96, okay? Now we're just doing some basic algebra. 3x equals 96. Okay, and then we will say that 96 divided by 3 is 32. Okay, and so that's the first integer right there, right? Is 32. And then that x plus 1 is 33. And the x plus 2 is 34. Okay, so those are our 3 consecutive integers, right? And so if you want to make sure that it's right, if you go ahead and add up 32, 33, and 34, 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 2 is 9 over here, and 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9. We got 99. Looks like we have a good answer. So that's the math way to do it. You can do guess and check on this. That will probably work, right? So if you just went into the answer choices and then you just looked for 3 consecutive integers and added them up and see which one adds up to 99, that would probably work too, right? And that might be the easier way. We don't have to worry about accidentally miscalculating something. But either way is fine. I need to be able to show you the math way. And so here's the math way. Guess and check. If you're more comfortable doing it that way, that should be perfectly fine. Okay, and then we got one more little type of question that can show up on this exam. Let me find it real quick after I erase. Okay, so this one will be a word problem. Okay, and then for whatever reason they decide to throw in word problems into numerical patterns. Okay, so let's see here. We'll go ahead and read this question. Okay, so it says after completing 60% of the test, Melissa has 16 questions left. How many questions were on the test in total? Okay, so that can be confusing. And so with something like this, we know we're going to need to set up an equation, right? And so we're first thinking that, okay, so if 60% of the test is completed, that would mean 40% is not completed, right? Okay, and 40% we could say equals 2/5. Okay, and that's going to be our left side of the equation. And this is the unfinished part of the test, right? Okay, what's not done? And so we did that because they said there's 16 questions undone left, so that we're getting the 2 and the 16 to represent the same kind of parts of the test, right? There's 2/5 of the test undone, there's 16 questions not done. Okay, and then down here below is what we don't know, right? And that's the total number of questions on the exam, X. Okay, so once we've done that, we have it set up correctly, and we can cross multiply these guys. 2 times X is 2X. 16 times 5 is 80. Divide each side by 2. X is 40. Okay, and so there's the math. Now I should have said this at the beginning, but like as we're looking at these questions, so like say that this part isn't as clear to you and you're not sure what to do, is there's still probably a way to eliminate some answers, which when we get stuck, which can happen, is if we could at least eliminate a couple answers, obviously our chances of guessing correctly goes up, right? So let me go ahead and just erase this and just write out like the logic part, okay? Because sometimes, we can set up the equation wrong or something. We want to be able to do it right, and with practice, especially through the app, you'll get better and better at it just by practicing questions, looking at the feedback. Okay, but we know, say we don't do any math. There's 16 questions left. Okay, and it says 60% of the test is done. Okay, and they want to know how many total questions are there, right? So this would be a lot easier if, this is just how you kind of like logically think it out if you feel trapped. Okay, if this number instead of 60 was 50, let's say that for a second, because 50 and 60 aren't that far apart. It's not going to be exactly the same, of course, but it's not that far apart. Okay, if we were 50% done and there were 16 questions left, then that would mean I'd already answered 16, right? And then our answer would be 32. Okay. Now, because it's 60% done, it's going to be a little bit higher than that. But at least think in, like, answers that are, answers that are really low, like 21, or really high, like 50, is we want to eliminate those. Like we're thinking something in the 30s or early 40s, right? Something like between, say, 35 and 45. Because that's where we think the answer is going to fall, somewhere in there, right? And if you know that, is a lot of times you can eliminate a couple of the answers, right? And if you're not sure how to do the math and you're forced to guess, fine, right? But we want to be able to know how to do the math, but at a minimum, if we can just learn how to kind of like think in math terms, is we can usually eliminate a couple of answers, and our chances of getting the right answer and getting the score that you want certainly go up a lot. All right, so that's what we got for this section.